Hello, and welcome to today's virtual seminar, Billing 101 with Tech, which is being brought to you by the Practice Management Resource Center at the State Bar of Michigan. I'm Joanne Hathaway, your host for today. All attendees are in listen-only mode without video activation. As always, we do encourage your questions, so please type those in the Q&A pod on your Zoom screen. Our esteemed guests today are Deborah Schaefer and Jaden Doye, who will now share some information about themselves and then begin programming. And let's start with you, Deborah.
I'm so sorry. Hi, my name is Deborah Schaefer, and I am a CPA, and I specialize in computerized accounting and billing for lawyers. 100% of my clients are lawyers. I've been in the business of selecting, implementing, and training law firms on legalized billing and accounting applications for the past 40 years. I'm going to pass it over now to my co-presenter, Jaden, who will introduce himself and then get us started on the webinar.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jaden Doye. I am a CPA and I own Prestige Accounting Consulting. And I like to work with law firm owners and helping them become more profitable and figuring out deficiencies in their firm that are holding them back from having a truly first-class firm. And I'm super excited for today's presentation. All right, so sorry.
No worries. So just to go over the agenda, and then I'll let Jaden start. We're going to go over what is included in a legal billing system and some of the components that you would need to address and know about. We're going to talk about the actual workflow of billing. We're going to discuss 5 ways billing practices can actually increase the profits in a law firm. And then we're going to talk about the use of technology as it relates to the billing for a law firm. So Jaden, you'll give us a start with the components of billing.
Absolutely. So as it pertains to the different components of legal billing, there are different things that you need to consider when considering which software you're going to go with. So of course, there's the timekeeping element. So with your software, ideally, you want to be able to easily track time and convert that time into invoices. You also want to make sure that client costs are something that you can track. And we'll get into hard costs versus soft costs in a moment. Then we'll talk about the work in process and accounts receivable reports and your billing format. So, question for you all, what is your primary method of tracking time? Go ahead and put your answer in the chat. Or if you don't track time, also put that in the chat.
Someone answered QuickBooks, manual spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I do flat fees, so they don't track time. None. I manually write them down on each file. I don't track time. I do flat fees.
Okay, well, I'll say this about tracking time. If I still recommend tracking time, even if you do flat fee, and I say that because it'll help you truly monitor your productivity and profitability for your various different matters. If you're charging contingency, you can still track time, and that can be used to monitor productivity of various associates in your firm. And then, of course, if you feel bill by the hour, tracking time, that converts directly over into invoicing and money coming into the firm. Next slide. Okay, so as it pertains to timekeeping, we want to think about a few different things. How easy is it to enter the time? So with most systems, you already have your clients and matters in your system, right? And so let's say your case management software, when you go to put in your time, it first prompts you to select the client or a matter. And then maybe you have some type of code that you can put in where it automatically gives a description, and then it tells you, and then you put the actual amount of time. So this is much easier than having to manually write it down or manually fill all of these fields in an Excel spreadsheet. Also, if you're on the go, if you're actual going to trial, sometimes those days can be very long. So having the option to do remote entry is definitely going to be beneficial. So actually asking the software provider if you're able to enter in your time from your phone would be very beneficial, because sometimes maybe you need to put something in rather quickly and you don't have time to fully set up your laptop, connect to Wi-Fi, things of that nature. Also, when it comes to timekeeping, you want to know what the required fields are that the software actually prompts you to enter as it pertains to tracking time. So I alluded to some of those already, such as the matter, client, description, maybe there's a quick code, things of that nature. Also, when it comes to timekeeping, I recommend not only keeping track of your billable time, but also your non-billable time, your admin time, and your CLE time. So there's various different reasons why this is going to be important. If you are recertifying and you can't remember when you did that CLE, let's say you didn't save the certificate, you can't find it in your email, things of that nature. It should be easy for you to search your time and go back, and you'll see when you did the CLE, and then it'll be easier to track the certificate down or the proof that you did that CLE. Admin time and non-billable time should also be tracked, because this helps with figuring out productivity. So in smaller firms, sometimes the firm is at a point where they are operating close to break even. And break even means the bare minimum that you have to make in your firm just to cover expenses. So have no profit at all. What is that revenue number look like? And so with that, we're able to say, if you only do 20 billable hours, then this will get you to your break-even point, right? But if you're doing 25 billable hours a week, then this will be your ideal profit margin. So when you're not only looking at associates' time, but your time, you're able to see where all your non-billable time is going to. And that can help you as far as indicating where you need to hire, so that the people that are supposed to be contributing to the bottom line and really getting those billable hours out, those people are in an environment where they don't have to do too much admin and non-billable work, and they're able to bring in the money into the firm. And lastly, rates. You want to make sure that the software provides you with a variety of different rates for you have that option. Sometimes different associates have different rates as it pertains to actually drafting versus research, or maybe you have a paralegal rate, you have a associate rate, things of that nature. So also making sure that you know what those rates are, and that your system allows you to input different rates is going to be important. All right, now when it comes to client costs, we have hard costs and we have soft costs. So the hard cost, this is directly related to the matters, and this tends to be honestly easier to track. So this will be things such as the filing fees and recording costs, things of that nature, things that are clearly matter specific. And if you are in a firm where you bill that to the client, you definitely want to be able to enter that into your system so that when you do your billing, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, not only is your time there to be converted into an invoice, but also the hard costs that need to be reimbursed to the firm. Soft costs, on the other hand, generally are more of overhead costs. This doesn't technically always mean that money is exchanged. Examples of this will be photocopies, office supplies, postage, things of that nature. And so these tend to be a little bit more difficult to track, because if you think about it, if you're going to charge 10 cents per page, then that means you have to go and for every matter, track how many pages are printed. And sometimes recovering that cost is actually more expensive than it would be to just not recover it at all. But it's something to consider. And sometimes firms will even do a flat rate for admin costs that are associated with the soft costs for specific matters. Then we have the work in process. So the work in process is a report that shows all the unbilled time and client costs. So remember, I said earlier how you've been compiling your time, you've been entering your client costs. When you go into your system and you pull a work in process report, this will show you where you are in your firm. So if you were to bill today, these are the time entries you need to bill for and the client costs that you need to bill for. It'll also show you the age of unbilled entries. So it'll say, you know, you've been working on this matter for 60 days and you haven't billed this client yet. And this is important because I noticed that with firms that only bill once a month, sometimes they have cash flow issues because collections come in slow. You have to think about the psyche of your ideal client avatar. So if you're working with somebody and you send them a bill for $5,000, and that person is maybe middle working class or slightly above middle working class, it may take them longer to pay that invoice than if you were to send them every 2 weeks an invoice for $2,000. So this kind of gives you an idea of this report helps you navigate. Is it time to bill? Do we need to speed up our billing? Do we need to do billing more frequently and things of that nature? And then you can, from this work in process report, create a pre-bill. So this will show you, this will give you one last time to look at all of the bills before you send them out to the clients. And this is great for quality control. So not just going straight from the work in process report to clicking a button, bill, and sending a client, but actually checking that pre-bill report to see if you need to make any changes. And if you have multiple associates working for you, it's also great to look at the report by responsible party. This will help you as far as navigate who is really feeding your bottom line. So which associates are actually billing hours and which ones need to step it up. And throughout this presentation, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and click the Q&A button at the bottom and ask your questions, and then we'll get to them throughout the presentation. The next part of component of billing is going to be your bill format. So the bill format comes in different forms, whether you mail it or you email it to clients. So remember, if you're mailing it, sometimes USPS can be unreliable. So that's something to consider versus if you email it or if you send it through your case management software, sometimes you're able to see if they actually viewed the receipt, or you actually receive a read receipt so you can see that they actually viewed the invoice. And on the bill, regardless if you're going to send it via paper or email, you'll have various different things on there, such as the details of the hours, the rate amount, the description of what you did, the date, the partner or associate on there, if it's a flat fee or not. And then when it comes to the email format, sometimes it can be, you can email it in the format of an attachment, or you can email it in the form of a link that they have to click to view the invoice. And when it comes to e-billing, there are the LEED codes and then the UTBMS codes. And depending on what industry you're in, sometimes one of these are going to be industry standard. And these are pretty much short codes that are used to describe the work that was done on a client matter.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the workflow of actually billing inside a law firm. I'm going to touch on a lot of things that Jaden did, because this all just, follows right through. So it's important for the first thing to do is obviously to accumulate your billable activity. Then we want to create the bills, we want to deliver the bills, and we want to collect on the bills. So I'm just going to discuss each of these functions. And the first one, obviously, is what Jaden spoke about in the beginning, is accumulating your time. Looking at your answers, it is clear to me that a lot of you are doing a lot of manual work, entering your time on an Excel spreadsheet and then probably sorting it and creating your bills from there. We're going to talk about billing technology at the end, but obviously the technology can help make that a lot simpler for you. I think it's very important to record your time every day. I have plenty of clients who do record their time at the end of the month, but it is very clear that they are not billing the most that they can if that's how they're accumulating their time. I can tell you that from experience, that I used to record all of my time manually and then go back and bill it. Now that I use a timer and I actually record my time as I'm doing it, I realize how I cut myself short and wasn't billing the most that I could. How you record your time is very important. It's very effective if you have a program that is going to pull in the right rate. And if you are doing of that e-billing, so you're required to submit your bills through a billing clearinghouse. Typically, it's in a LEEDS 1998 format. And each of the time and expense entries does require a UTBMS code for the task, which is like an L code for litigation. And there are different UTBMS codes based upon the type of law. But it's always very helpful to have a software program that will check to be sure that you're including the correct code on every time entry prior to submitting it to the vendor who's going to review the bill. Because basically what the e-billing programs do is just a computerized program that reads every single time entry. And built into that program is standards that said, if you're doing case development, that you should spend so much time on that. And so not only do most of those e-bills require the UTBMS code for the task, they also require a second code which further differentiates or describes the time of the type of task that you're doing. It's great that you have an app that's on your phone, because if the app can actually record phone calls, emails, and there are desktop apps, cloud apps that actually start a timer when you start typing in an email or a document. So again, the most efficient way to record your time, or any of your timekeepers in your firm, is going to be the best thing that you can do. It's off. Yes.
Oh, excuse me, Deborah. I'm sorry. I did want to let you know that we do have a question in the queue, and I think it's timely now. You're talking about the billing code acronyms, and we do have one of our registrants wanting to know, what do those code acronyms mean?
So I think they're asking me about the UTBMS acronym, and that is Universal Time Billing. I don't even know what it means, but they are codes that have been agreed upon by firms that require require this e-billing. It's typically done for large corporations where they bring in a lot of outside counsel, and it's a way for these large corporations to control their legal costs and make sure that they can process them better. It's universal time billing codes or something like that. I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what it means, and I apologize. The e-billing stands for electronic billing, and the leads is a format of those bills that have to be submitted through a billing clearinghouse. It used to be that when this e-billing was first started that there were many different formats, but most of the e-billing clearinghouses have all conformed to LEEDS 1998B. There is also a 2K format, a LEEDS 2000 format. There are a couple others, but predominantly everybody uses a LEEDS 1998B. And so it's those codes that I talked about that have to be used with that type of billing. So a lot of people accumulate their billing activity either in a, there you go, someone told me, that's so smart and I appreciate it. It's Uniform Task-Based Management System Codes. Thank you for helping me there. I did not know what the acronym meant, and I appreciate your help. And it's something that's been agreed upon by, I guess, the Bar Association and these billing companies. So accumulating your time is very important. And the less time you have to spend recording your time, it increases your productivity. And that's what's most important. So being able to either get your time off of a calendar or to enter it on your phone, to have a mechanism or a software program that helps you gather that time is going to be very, very helpful in this billing workflow. So once all of the time and the costs, because that is something that's very important, are these client costs. So it's very, I think it's very important to have an integrated accounting and billing system, because as you pay a filing fee, you want to be sure that those costs that you're paying for, those hard costs, a hard cost is something where you actually spend money on the cost. We want to make sure that those are being charged to the client. One of the biggest losses that I see in law firms is the inability to recover the client costs that are incurred for lawyers to work a case. So if you write a check and at the same time you write a check, it gets posted to the client's ledger, you know it's going to be included on that bill. As Jaden said, these soft costs are a little harder to accumulate, but there are plenty of printers and there are plenty of machines that actually accumulate these costs for you. And those machines can feed into your billing system and automatically have that information transferred into your bills. I have seen, just as Jaden has said, that what many firms are doing, I mean, people used to charge for faxes and long distance phone calls. None of that exists anymore. So what I have seen in recent times is law firms are taking a percentage of their fees and charging it as an overhead cost. Or I've also seen firms do on the first bill, let's say $120 for overhead for the duration of the case. So again, you know, recovering that, those soft costs, photocopies, long distance charges, postage is a very big one, is important, because if you don't, it is a way of, you know, spending your profits. So once everything's accumulated, the cost, the time, even trust transactions, retainers, things of that sort, then you're ready to start creating your bills. I always think it's a good idea to create something called a pre-bill. Many of my lawyers will take that WIP report that Jaden was talking about. They might print it by responsible lawyer or whomever does the billing, and they may, from that WIP report, determine who they are going to bill in this billing cycle. And from that report, they may select who they're going to generate a pre-bill for. Every firm does this a little bit differently, but typically the lawyer in charge, the responsible attorney, will review the pre-bill for accuracy, make any corrections, maybe decide that someone had billed too much time to a file and that the client cannot pay all that time. So they may write time down or they may adjust it. And it's actually very important to keep track of that so that you can determine the productivity and profitability of your timekeepers within the firm. So it's important to identify who has to review those pre-bills. Who's going to do those edits? Is it going to be an administrative person? Are partners doing them themselves? Do you have a dedicated billing staff? So again, based upon the way the firm is structured, that will decide who is going to edit those entries. It may be that there's a time entry that you want to show on a bill, but you don't want to charge the client for it. So it's always good if your billing system has some sort of mechanism to identify that this is time spent on the file, but there's no charge for it. These non-billable entries where I spent time on a file, I don't want the client to see it, but I do want that time entry considered when I look at the profitability and productivity of those files themselves. So once all the edits have been done, everything's been accumulated, the pre-bill's been reviewed, we want to generate the invoice. So once that invoice is generated, it's very important that the firm have some sort of process or policy as to how they're going to deliver those bills. I recommend today that you email everything. There's really no reason to send much of a snail mail, but people do still like to send bills. I find that with an email, you can get a read receipt and a delivery receipt, so you know the client did get the bill. Unfortunately, our mail is not as reliable as it used to be, but certainly many firms do still mail their bills. Electronically is those e-bills. That's where I was talking about those bills that do require those UTBMS codes that do go, typically you log on to a website and you upload the bill in the format that the website requires. And obviously that's the quickest way to deliver them. Once the bills are completed, and we hope that they're delivered to the clients, the next thing is how are you going to get paid for those bills? And this is very important. So today, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't get a call from a client that has had some fraudulent activity. What's happening right now in banking and in the mail is people are going through the mail and pulling checks out. And with all the graphics that we have, they're able to generate checks and create fraudulent checks on especially trust accounts or even operating accounts. So many of the banks require that you give them a list of checks that were written. So to help that, a lot of law firms are taking credit cards or ACH payments or wires. And if you're going to be accepting alternate methods of payment, that should be clearly identified on the bill itself. So the format in which the bill is presented is very, very important. Whether you're going to show the detail of every time entry, hours, amount, rate, or you're just going to show a total. And then again, on the bottom of the bill, having that payment, those payment instructions, so that the client can see that there are lots of ways for them to pay the bill. As Jaden mentioned, there is with a lot of these credit card processing companies, LawPay, Gravity Legal, many of the software companies have their own. Clio has its own credit card processing company, and so does Carrot, which used to be called Zola, which is part of Abacus, which everything is now called Carrot. They have their own credit card processing. I'm seeing more and more software vendors do it themselves. But what happens is you're able to, on an invoice that is emailed to the client, actually put a link on that invoice so that the client can click on the link on the invoice and go to that payment processing company and submit their payment either as a credit card or as an ACH. One of the things about billing with a law firm is the longer that it takes the client to pay you, the less chance you have of getting paid. So bills need to be very timely. Bills that are not paid need to be followed up very timely. You let a bill go out to 120 days, the chance of you collecting that bill is under 50%. Obviously, different types of law have different standards, but the longer it takes you to bill, the less frequent you bill, then the less chance you have to collect it. So if someone is over 30 days, you should be reviewing your accounts receivable reports and sending past due notices. If you bill on a monthly basis, then past due notices should be sent at the same time. I do recommend for many of my law firms to stagger their billing. Because if you assume a client pays within 30 days, you know your cash flow is going to come 30 days after you do the bills. So what I recommend to clients is to do half of their billing at the 15th, half of their billing at the 30th. A lot of firms are just billing all month long. They're not waiting till the end of the month anymore. So again, the frequency of your billing is going to have a direct impact on the collection of that AR. Okay, Jaden's going to bring you now into the next section.
All right. Now we're going to talk about 5 different ways that you can actually make sure that your billing practices are helping you increase your profits. Next slide. All right, so the first one being that making sure that all billable activities are actually billed. So sometimes you might get a phone call from a client and you don't actually track that. Sometimes you even had a Zoom call with the client and you didn't document that in your system. So sometimes there are actual softwares that can integrate with your calendar, with your Zoom account, with your phone, to make sure that you're not missing out on money and that all the time that you gave to each client is actually tracked. Another tool that you can use is timers. So I love to talk about time blocking. So that means that, let's say from 12 to 4, no distractions, no interruptions. I'm only going to be focused on production, right? And so maybe during that time, there are a number of different clients that you're working on, and you set a timer for each time you start a new contract. If you're doing contract review for 8 clients, you start and stop a timer when you start and finish a project. And that way you don't have to go back and do the math and figure out how much time you spent on each matter. It's automatically already tracked for you because you use that timer. Also recording the time worked in a timely manner. So I recommend, like Debbie said, every day, but I recommend even making sure before you take a lunch, and if you don't take a lunch, you should take a lunch. So before you take your lunch, make sure all your time is in. Before you take your afternoon snack break or walk or coffee break, make sure all your time is in. And then before you leave, make sure all your time is in. So making sure that you give yourself some downtime at the end of the day, just to make sure that you can decompress, prep for the next day, and that all your billable activity is in for the current day is going to be very important. Mobile apps, like I said earlier, are definitely helpful in making sure that when you're on the go, you can still track time. I have a lawyer on my floor who takes calls in the bathroom. I don't know if he's putting that time in, but if he has a mobile app, then he can put that time in on his mobile phone.
Jaden, we do have a question in the queue before you move on to the next slide. One of our attendees is asking what software will track my phone call time, my email drafting, etc. remotely.
There's,
So,
go ahead.
okay. Yeah, there is a product called iTimekeep. That is something it's currently owned by Elite. But that's a very good program. There is also the one I mentioned, Carrot Legal Software. They actually have timers built into their software that will record your desktop activities. I believe they have a mobile app. They may do it too. Another one that I've used quite a bit is oh my goodness. This is what happens when you get old. I'll think of it and I will let you know. There is another one. I just can't think of the name. I'm going to Google it while Jaden's talking. Go ahead.
Yes, oh, I was just going to add also, Deborah mentioned carrot, and sometimes that's misleading. That's spelled K-A-R-E-T. So in case you're,
C-A-R-E-T.
oh, is it a C?
It is a
Okay.
C. It's
Oh my goodness.
C-A-R-A-T. No problem. That's all good.
Okay, I was
I'm happy.
close.
You
I
were
was
very
close.
close. You were perfect. You were perfect.
Okay. Thank
I'll-
you. Back to Jaden.
Thank you for that question and for your contribution. The only other two that I would consider taking a look at would be Cosmolex and then a software called Time Miner, M-I-N-E-R, like, you know, people who work in a mine. All right, we can go to the next slide.
Hold on. Sorry.
All right. And in conjunction with making sure all your billable activities is billed, you want to make sure that you're avoiding your drop client costs. Okay. So you want to, one, figure out how you're going to handle indirect costs. If you're going to actually do a flat rate admin fee, or if you're just going to incorporate that into the cost of doing business and make sure that your profitability margin is ideal. But when it comes to the hard costs like filing fees and things of that nature, making sure that if, for instance, if you're a family law attorney, you're most likely billing by the hour, because flat rate family law cases can go one way or another. As you know, they present one way and then it ends up being way more than you expected. And so you're most likely charging filing fees and hourly. So making sure that you have a good system for recording all of that is going to be key. Now, I recommend that you have I have people that use credit cards for direct costs, and that's fine. However, where it gets confusing is if you use a card for everything, including your client costs, then it gets hard to track. So if you are one that uses your credit card, a business credit card for client costs, what you want to make sure that you do is use a card designated only for client costs. That way, when you and your accountant are doing the reconciliations and trying to figure out this filing fee that you did on August 8th, what client matter was that for? We can look back. We can look back at the system and see. We can look at all the charges that were charged on the statement and make sure all of those charges are also in our case management software and then billed. So it's easy to have it's easier to do checks and balances when you have a designated account for that.
Jaden, we do have another question in the queue. And this is kind of a two-parter. So the question is, does any of your recommended software integrate with QuickBooks? I enter my time on QuickBooks and do use the QuickBooks timer to keep track of my time. This works to a point, but doesn't appreciate phone call interruptions and staff interruptions, etc.
So would you mind if we hold this one off until the last section of our presentation? Because we are going to talk about software solutions.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you.
All right, next slide. Okay, then another way that you can do things is automated billing and payments. So let's say you're working with Clio. I've actually helped clients format their bills in Clio so that their invoices look both professional and informative and fit the overall branding of the firm. So making sure that your invoices are already customized so that when you do your routine billing, they all look the same. Getting your clients on a routine is going to be key. So for instance, my firm, we automatically do the billing on the 15th of every month, right? But our clients are on automatic ACH, so it's fine. But for a firm that doesn't automatically charge their clients and have to wait for their clients to make a payment, you may want to pick 2 or 3 dates in the month that, or a day of the week, every Friday bills are going to go out, or on the 5th and the 25th bills go out. So that way, when as clients are working with you throughout the length of time it takes to complete the matter, they already know to expect a bill around certain days, and they're able to get their money together around those times so that they can pay you timely. Batch generation, not creating invoices one by one, but going from a work in process report to a pre-bill and then sending those bills out is definitely going to be a big time saver. And we're talking about increasing your profits here where time is money. So doing this will actually take billing from a whole day situation to maybe an hour. Electronic delivery and making sure that people can pay you easily. We don't want them to have to do a whole crossword puzzle in order to give us money. So making sure that we have an easy link for them to click the link and then enter their data and even save their account if applicable, so that they can make their payments quicker. And you're actually reducing fraud with electronic payments because, as Debbie alluded to earlier, there is a lot of mail fraud going on. So when people are mailing checks, people are looking at the mail and sometimes they will steal that check. And then you have to wait for the client to mail you another check. Next slide. And having an efficient collection process. Ideally, we don't actually want to have to go through the collection process with clients. However, sometimes it's inevitable. So making sure that your billing is timely, you have uncluttered bills, it's clear the description and what you did and the amounts. You're tracking your retainer balances and unbilled amounts, and have periodic retainer replenishment notices are proactive collection activities that you can do to avoid having to have invoices that are past due. When it comes to your retainer replenishment notice, you have to set the standard in your firm to where when a client retainer gets below a certain amount, that's when you make sure that they have to add more money. So back to my earlier example with the family law firm, if you know that you have about $2,000 of work to be billed at any point on these various matters, you don't want that retainer to go below $2,000, because you never want, if your standard in your firm is to always get the client to pay a retainer and then earn the fee and then transfer the money from the retainer to your operating account, you don't want to convolute things and make things more difficult by having their retainer be obsolete and then having to send them an invoice that goes directly to your operating account. Now we're throwing off the billing cycle and your billing practices, and now you have to wait longer to get money on a matter that you already earned the fees on. And then reactive is having to send batch collection notices. So setting the standard where people that are 30 days past due, what email or mail they'll get. If they're 60 days past due, you set the standard in your firm, but being able to have a system where you can send that out in a batch is going to be a great time saver for you. Next slide. And then you also want to make sure that you're leveraging your billing metrics. So I don't recommend trying to do this on your own. Having somebody walk you through the numbers will definitely help you as far as, one, figuring out, is the billable and non-billable time proportional? Does it make sense if you're paying someone $100,000 that they're only billing $105,000 for the year? And where is all their non-billable time going? So having the right system, and as far as time tracking is concerned, will help you look at those billing metrics. Also, comparing your accounts receivables and work in process based off of the different types of matters. So maybe if you're a bankruptcy attorney, Chapter 7 versus Chapter 13 bankruptcies, those accounts receivable may be outstanding longer. And accounts receivable just pretty much means that these are invoices that are due to you. So money that hasn't been paid to you yet. And then for the people that say that they don't track time and they do flat fee cases, you can leverage billing metrics to track the productivity on those flat fee, fixed fee cases and verify that one, you're priced correctly, and two, that the actual direct labor hours that go into the matter are conducive to your ideal profit margin. So let's say you'll get $3,000 for an estate plan, and the labor on that, even though you charge a flat rate, when you actually look at your metrics, you see that technically, if this person were to bill their normal rate, this should be their billable rate would be maybe about $2,000. So now we're only looking at a profit margin of about 1,000, and that's not really ideal because we want most firms want their labor percentage to be less than 30%. So that's something to look at. Also looking, tracking billing and collections by party. This means by each associate that you have, what billing, how much are they billing, and are they collecting from their clients, and then utilization versus realization rate. So this is looking at how much time we actually did on a matter versus how much time we actually billed, and then how much revenue we actually collected on this matter. So those are various different metrics that you should be talking to your accountant about.
Okay,
Next.
so now we're going to start talking about technology, okay? And we're going to start talking about how we make this easier for you, because there are so many solutions available, and it really is to your benefit to use one that's going to help you keep track of time, get your billing out, and get your collections done. So again, we started talking, one of you asked a great question, is what are some of those timekeeping tools? And I mentioned some of those products to you. I still can't think of that other one, but I will by the time I finish. Some of you mentioned that you keep your track of your time on Excel spreadsheets. Many of the legal software available allows for the import of these spreadsheets that you're keeping your time on. Some of them have you just enter directly. So it's important to understand what is in the software that's going to help you. Those shortcuts where, you know, instead of typing telephone call from client, you can type TCFC and it'll automatically expand. Those are tools inside the software products that can help you better track your time in a more efficient way. So legal billing software solutions come in a lot of different flavors. There are plenty of practice management products. This gets back to the QuickBooks question. QuickBooks itself does have timekeeping software, and a lot of the practice management solutions, Clio, Practice Panther, Smokeball, Leap, almost all of them will have some sort of integration with either QuickBooks or Xero. So that is an option. There is also software packages that include not just billing, but also accounting, all-in-one solutions, where as you write a check, it automatically goes to every place you need it to be posted to. The client ledger, the general ledger, the check register, all of it. And then there are some software solutions for lawyers that are practice area specific. There's a product called CasePeer, which is used for PI clients. There sometimes are products for every kind of law, and that may be a sort of solution that you could look at. So in order to pick the solution that's going to be best for you, you have to determine what you're really looking for. This word practice management has been thrown around in the legal industry for quite some time, and it means different things to different people. So whenever I get a call from a law firm and they tell me they want practice management solution, my first question is, what do you really want it to do? And once we drill down on what they're really looking for, sometimes it isn't a complete practice management system. Sometimes it could be just a calendaring program. Sometimes it could just be a document management system where you have a way to store your documents in a way that anybody in the firm can retrieve them. Sometimes it's about document generation and elder care. And oftentimes in PI, they send out the same kind of things and and rather than recreating, they want to take a template and just put information in it. Client intake is something that's very important. Conflict checking should be included in any billing and any accounting system, and obviously in any practice management solution as well. So it's important to really identify what you're looking for. In order to select that solution, as I said, get your requirements in some documentation. Put it on paper. Don't just keep it in your head. Involve every single staff member in your organization, because oftentimes the partners don't really realize what's going down in the admin section. So I tell you to set a realistic expectations, to set a realistic budget. Things are not $10 a user anymore. I would say that most software today with a good legal billing and accounting product is going to cost you anywhere from $70 to $100 a month per user, but not every timekeeper is going to be a user. And so you have to really look at your solutions and have a realistic budget. When you start looking at these cloud solutions that are available today, because that's really what you want to be on is a cloud. You don't want the on-premise solutions because they're older, they're legacy products, and they don't have all the bells and whistles. Remember that once you move to the cloud, you may not need all the IT services for your server and things of that sort. Make a wish list, have pain points so that when you identify and look at solutions, you can make sure that they are actually satisfying those pain points. So as I mentioned, there is software installed on your server or there's cloud-based software. And I believe that most of the products today that are best for law firms are cloud-based. So you're going to decide what you want these solutions to do. Do you want one of those all-in-one solutions? Do you want a practice management that integrates with QuickBooks or Xero? Or do you want a solution that has their own accounting? I'm going to speak about that at the end. I really am going to wait till the end to give you my opinions on these. So once you've identified what you want the software to do, you should identify the potential solutions available. Ask your bar associations, talk to a consultant like Jaden or myself, go to legal tech shows, research, Google, just Google it. Everything's so available. Once you've identified some potential solutions, the next process is actually evaluating those solutions. You want to see a demonstration of the software. You want your staff, you want staff at every level to be on that demo. If you can get a trial period on that software, that is a great thing to do so that you can actually work in it and make sure it's going to satisfy what you need it to do. During that demonstration, ask a lot of questions. Ask how to do things that you need to do inside your firm. Do you need to do flat fee billing? Do you want to email your bills? Do you have to do those leads bills, that e-billing? Make sure all of that is included. Do you need to transfer trust at the time of billing, as Jaden had said? One of the things to put in your wish list or your requirements are those productivity reports. Make sure that those are available to you so that you can evaluate whether you're making money by the type of law, by the timekeeper, all of those different things. Once you are looking and starting to evaluate, you want to ask your vendors about the conversion. Some of you are using apps now. Clio, for instance, if you're going to move away from Clio, you want to make sure that the company you're going to go to can convert that data. And what are they going to convert? Are they going to convert WIP? Are they going to just bring in balance forward? Are they going to be able to bring in historical information so that you could go back to a bill that was done on your legacy system? So it's very important that you ask about these. Most software companies are going to charge you to convert your data from one application to another. There are one or two, I know of one, that does not charge for a conversion, and it's a great deal. So again, what do you want converted? Open matters, closed matters? You decide what you need. One of the things about a conversion is it's never simple. There is never a best time of year to do it. I feel the best time to do it is at a month end. Most of the software vendors have you always do it at a month end. A year end is ideal, but not everybody's going to wait till your fiscal year ends. Consider your billing cycles. I'm going to tell you this. It's my belief that when you move from one billing program to another, you want to complete your billing cycle in your old software, because it's going to take you a while to get up to date on the new software, and you don't want to be pressed to keep your cash flow going. If you can get a test conversion, you should certainly do that. Training is the most important part of moving to a new piece of software. You want to know how to use it. Don't scrimp on your training. Let your people know. Be sure that your software vendor is going to give that to you, or the consultant that you're working with. Be sure there's a tech support line or a chat box. Where are you going to go when you need help? And that should be something that's identified as you're selecting your software. When you move from one software company to another, you have to expect disruptions. There will be. You want to know how secure the software is, who's doing the backup, and what if it doesn't work out with that new software vendor. You want to know if they're going to work with you to help you move to another software solution. So at this point, I am now going to give opinions. And I always say that because not everybody agrees with my opinions. I don't believe that QuickBooks is a solution for attorneys. All the accountants in the land love QuickBooks because they know it. But I don't believe QuickBooks is a good solution for attorneys. Number one, it doesn't understand trust accounting. Number two, all of the accounting is done on the accrual method and not the cash method. Here in the United States, service industries report their income based on their collections, not on their billings. And that is what determines a different accounting method system. Accrual is income by billings, cash is income by collections. I find that the QuickBooks software is not very good at recording client costs and getting those recovered. I also find that all of these practice management products that don't have accounting and integrate with QuickBooks have a one-way integration. So if you start writing checks in QuickBooks and it doesn't go to your billing system, you are just siphoning money out of your firm because you're not recovering those client costs. So I do believe that it's very, very important that you analyze what you're getting from QuickBooks. And if what you're getting from QuickBooks is making it easier for your accountant, that's not good enough, because guess what? Your accountant is working for you. And so I really feel that you should be getting the software that's best for your law firm, the software that's going to give you the information that's going to help you manage and grow your firm in the best possible way. So that is the end of Jaden's and my presentation. There is time for questions. I don't know if anybody wants to chat any questions or put it in the Q&A panel, but Jaden and I are here to answer that.
Yes, so please, as Deborah said, let us know if you have any questions by typing them in the Q&A pod on your screen. And also, while you're doing that, I did want to let you know that when you exit today's virtual seminar, your browser will take you to a brief survey, and your feedback is really, is important to us. So please take a few moments to complete this, as your comments will help us develop future programming. So we do have a question, and that is, what billing software do you recommend for a solo practitioner?
So personally, again, I think that there are only a handful of products that actually have billing and accounting in them. And for a solo, I think that that is imperative. Cosmolex is one of the ones that many solos use. Soluno is an excellent billing and accounting product. I do like Carrot Legal a lot. I do sell that sometimes. That has billing, accounting, and practice management. So those were the three that I probably would say for a solo are the ones I would consider.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, I am not seeing any further Q&As in the pod. And so this concludes our programming for today. And we'd like to thank our speakers today, Deborah and Jaden, and also you for joining the State Bar of Michigan virtual seminar.